Hello and welcome to Most Recent Save, a podcast where we load up my latest deep dive into the worlds of science, games, and pop culture. Each month, I'll bring you a fresh save file packed with insights, research, and stories that bridge these spaces. Think of it as an audio companion to the Zeitgeist newsletter. So grab your controller, keyboard, or just your curiosity, and let's continue on this journey together. I am your host, Dr. Rachel Cohort. Here are some of the things you may have missed in June 2025. It was an extra busy month in the research world. Moral panic. Why are we still here? A tragic act of violence unfolded this month as a gunman in Graz, Austria murdered 9 students and 1 teacher at his former school. The opening line of the article reporting the crime, he was a, quote, obsessive online first-person shooter. This is an awful act of violence, but I can't even with this headline. If you get past the headline, they also mention that he failed a psychological exam to determine if he was fit to own weapons, and also that the writer believes the gun laws are too lax in that particular area of the world. Then why are video games the headline? Video games do not turn non-violent humans into violent ones. They don't. They have 50 years and millions of dollars of grant funding that has been dedicated to this, and they just don't. We are focusing all the concentration on the wrong boogeyman. In fact, there isn't a boogeyman here at all, just a lot of conversations we are perpetually avoiding about access to weapons, lack of access to mental health support, and online radicalization. The uncensored library in Minecraft. Maybe I'm late to the game, but I just found out that Minecraft is being used to provide censored news, like news that has been censored by government or other external sources, to young people through a project sponsored by Reporters Without Borders. I had no idea this existed. It's pretty incredible. In my newsletter, I have a link that takes you to a video that explains the entire project. It is a great example of how games can be used to educate and serve the public good. AOIR Risky Research Guide. The Association of Internet Researchers, which is AOIR, released a Risky Research Guide this month, which was created to directly address the increasing personal, institutional, and political risks faced by researchers around the globe. This is a fantastic resource that should be provided to every researcher in game studies at the start of their programs as part of the informed consent process. As discussed by the authors in this guide, quote, this guide builds upon and extends AOIR's longstanding commitment to ethics, care, and collective responsibility within internet research. It is freely available, and I have a link in this month's newsletter where you can find it. Just to put this need for such a thing into perspective, a new report this month found that 56% of female scientists and 46% of male scientists report having experienced harassment on at least one occasion. Nintendo Switch 2 sells 3.5 million units in the first 4 days. Have you picked up a Nintendo Switch 2 yet? In the first 4 days following its launch earlier this month, it sold more than 3.5 million units worldwide, becoming the fastest-selling Nintendo game system to date. I was lucky enough to pick one up, and I've been trying to unlock Rainbow Road ever since. Moderating toxicity and fraud? Effective moderation to lower toxicity is not just making the world nicer, better place, it is directly impacting user trust and engagement, i.e. your revenue streams, but also potentially your ability to detect fraud. A new report from Modulate this month outlines how moderating toxicity in games help them detect real-world fraud also happening in these spaces, from impersonation to emotional manipulation to social engineering. Turns out the same voice patterns that they were using to detect toxic behavior were also accurate at detecting these various kinds of voice fraud. There's a link to the full report in this month's newsletter. DUCC, a new digital literacy program. This month, DUC, Developing and Using Critical Comprehension, was released. This is a program that was developed to teach K-5 students digital literacy through a series of 24 lessons. Developed by a slew of creators and advisors, I am really excited to see how this curriculum gets rolled out into schools across the globe. Now to the research portion of this month's podcast. Buckle up, there's a bunch. New research, Fixing the Science of Digital Technology Harms. A new piece by Amy Orban and Nathan Matthias, they're doing some really amazing work together, was published taking a bird's eye view at the challenges scientists face with measuring, quote-unquote, technology harms. They discuss challenges around limited scientific resources and restrictions on proprietary data as stymieing scientists' efforts to assess the impact of technologies on those who use them. As put by the researchers, we must, quote, urgently fix this science policy ecosystem to support timely measured assessments of socio-technical risks that can lead to real change. We must transform how science and policy is organized, better manage the risk of being wrong, and develop policies that synchronize science and innovation. The full piece is available on Science, although it's not accessible without an institutional affiliation. New research: longer bans help curb bad behavior. Some new research from Roblox reveals that longer bans significantly reduce repeat offenses without driving users away. This is not only really insightful, but a fantastic example of how publishing research done in-house in a studio can help support all trust and safety efforts across the industry. Bravo to Roblox for doing this work and making it available to everyone. However, relatedly, there was a piece published this month from Revon Toulet. I don't know how to pronounce it. Revonlet. Where are my French speakers? About people evading bans, about the various ban evasion tactics that users, specifically on Roblox, are utilizing. As we now know that bans, especially longer ones, apparently, can be one of the most effective tools in the moderation toolkit, this report is also worth a read. New research: toxicity in competitive video games vary by source and outcome. New research this month took a deeper look into the variations in the effects of toxicity in competitive video games. Specifically analyzing data from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, researchers found that exposure to toxicity has statistically significant causal effects on short-term player engagement, lowering it, and increasing the probability that other players engage in similar behavior in the current match. However, these effects varied significantly depending on whether toxicity originated from opponents or teammates, whether it originated from teammates in the same or different party, and the match's outcome. These findings all have meaningful implications regarding the allocation of resources for combating toxicity and the nature of toxicity across various contexts. This work is the latest piece to come out of the collaboration between Activision and Caltech. I've mentioned their work in this newsletter many times before, and the paper is open access and available to read and linked in this month's newsletter. I just also want to point out that game companies, you are crushing it this month with your research and advocacy around issues of trust and safety, and I am here for it. Your work is making the digital world a better place, actually the digital and non-digital world, because you know my platform is online and offline as a false dichotomy. So thank you for prioritizing this work. New research: mental health content moderation and well-being tools on social media platforms. This month, a new piece was published which performed an ethnographic walkthrough method to evaluate content moderation systems and user tools in a series of 4 social networking platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Tellme. I've never heard of that one. Tellmi. This is the kind of work we love to see. It is timely, it is detailed, it provides a wealth of information about the state of things across sites. TLDR, the researchers found successes and challenges in balancing user safety and content moderation across platforms. While varied mental health resources were available on all the platforms, several issues emerged, including a redundancy of information, broken links, and a lack of non-US-centric resources. Also, despite the presence of self-moderation tool options, reporting tools, there was an insufficient evidence of user education and testing around these features, potentially limiting their effectiveness. If people don't know how to use the tools, then how useful are they really? You can read the full piece. It's fully available online, and I highly recommend doing so if you were even tangentially interested in the trust and safety world. New research: sexism and stereotypes in board gaming cultures. New research explored sexism, stereotypes, and what they call subcultural capital in board gaming communities. Much like digital game communities, women are often stereotyped as having a particular interest and competency, and that's frequently related to so-called lower status positions within the community. For me, it's really fascinating that the stereotypes in digital game spaces are also reflected in analog gaming communities, which makes sense, but also I still found it oddly surprising. New research: cultural value of games. A new research piece this month examines how video games are no longer on the fringe of our cultural and social life, but centered within them. Taking a more theoretical approach, they discuss how other cultural institutions have legitimized video games and reinforced their cultural status. As someone who has continually argued that video games are cultural assets of influence, this research piece really spoke to me. Last piece of new research this month. I told you there was a bunch. New research: ChatGPT rots your brain, or does it? You may have seen the new work out of MIT that concluded that ChatGPT leads to cognitive debt and, as they hypothesize, a likely decrease in learning skills. However, let's not be so hasty. A piece from The Conversation this month digs deeper and takes a more scrutinous eye to this piece of research. I really enjoyed reading this, not only because I agree with their criticisms, but also because it is a great example of scientific communication, breaking down some of these really complicated and nuanced questions we are exploring in scientific circles to show that things aren't always as cut and dry as they seem. In case you missed it, Zeitgeist. There were a lot of things happening this month in my world. First, I traveled to Brussels for some work with Discord and also managed to sneak in a side trip to Bruges, which is a place I've always wanted to see, and it was as beautiful and great as I thought it would be. I also managed to catch an evening with the Brussels Philharmonic playing video game music. Sometimes my work is really cool. This month, I also attended the 2025 Games for Change Festival. I made a little recap of this and actually of my Bruges trip. They are both up on my YouTube channel, which is Zeitgeist, in the shorts section. But some top highlights from Games for Change was Leo Lebe. He spoke about how, quote, the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. So do something. He was talking about using our energy and our efforts in the service of others for advocacy and for focusing on the positive things that games and play can bring to the world. He also talked a lot about community, which I really liked. Dr. Deepak Chopra showed up this year. That was a huge surprise on the main stage at Games for Change. He led us in a 1-minute group meditation, which was pretty incredible, and also discussed conscious game design and how when we are conscious about the design choices we are making, it's when we start to change the experience that we are having. It was a very thriving in games group, digital thriving playbook, resonant moment. Last but not least, KID is doing some really innovative things in the trust and safety in games space, and Kay Vassy gave a workshop. And that was no exception to the innovation I've been seeing coming out from that organization. She discussed the importance of proactive moderation efforts and highlighted some of the top concerns that are being discussed by regulators in the context of games: unmoderated chat, underage data collection, lack of age gating, behavioral advertising, and loot boxes. At Games for Change this year, I was also awarded the Vanguard Award, which was a true honor, and I hope that the video will be out soon so you can relive the magic of my complete out-of-body experience that I had going up to the stage and giving a speech and receiving the award. I would also like to relive it and try to piece together what I actually said when I was on that stage. I did remember to thank my mom, so I guess, mission accomplished. It is a true honor to be recognized by one's peers, and I'm feeling honored and grateful to be one such person. At Games for Change, we also had a Zeitgeist of Pop Culture Author Editor Meetup, which included some new editors with some untitled projects, TBD. Speaking of new projects, there is a current open call for papers for the Zeitgeist of Pop Culture Severance until the end of July. You can learn more about that project. There's a link in my newsletter, but you can also go to zeitgeistofpopculture.com. Parenting, screen time, and life preparedness. This month at Nurture, I published a new piece about critical thinking. Critical thinking isn't just a school skill, it's a life skill, one that can and should start developing in early childhood. Digital games can help young kids build real-world problem-solving skills through play. Yes, play, especially the kind that sparks curiosity, lets kids experiment, and gives them the agency to ask, what happens if I try this instead? All roads lead to Stanley Parable. Maybe that's going to be my new phrase, because that's what that makes me think of. But in the article, I mentioned games like Angry Birds and Minecraft in creative mode and Nurture offer opportunities for kids to explore cause and effect, strategic planning, flexible thinking, and more, and all while having fun. This article is linked to my newsletter, but you can also go to nurture.is/academy to find that piece, as well as all of the other pieces that I have been working on in collaboration with Nurture. All right, it's time for the best part of the podcast, which is the side quests, what I'm reading. I'm reading this piece from Inverse. It's called A Cult Fantasy Movie Redefined The Wizard of Oz, and Nobody Noticed. So, for years, the movie Return to Oz lived rent-free in my head. For those fellow geriatric millennials, you'll understand this when I say that Return to Oz was one of those movies I kept catching halfway through, sneaking in late hours of television from my room as a kid, and then I would go around endlessly asking everyone if anyone knew what the movie was that had the witch with the Hall of Heads, and I suffered for literal years with everyone looking at me like I had lost the plot. Because you couldn't Google it. IMDb wasn't a thing. I'm glad to say the advent of the internet allowed me to re-find my love of Return to Oz and watch it in its entirety a copious amount of times. This month, Inverse published a piece discussing the cultural impact this movie had on the world, and I'm so glad I'm not the only one who found this movie equally enthralling and horrifying. What I'm watching: The Game Maker's Playbook, Claire Obscure, Expedition 33. I have not had the joy of playing Expedition 33 yet, but I did very much enjoy watching the Game Maker's Notebook episode from this month, chatting with the lead writer. I think you'll like it too. This month I don't have a what I've been playing because I've been traveling a lot and I haven't really been playing much, but rather it's a what I want to be playing, and that's LEGO Voyagers from Lightbrick Studio and Annapurna. I don't usually follow the Summer Games Fest, really, that closely, but this one caught my eye and has lived rent-free in my mind ever since. Lightbrick Studio and Annapurna Interactive showed off a new LEGO co-op multiplayer game during Summer Game Fest called LEGO Voyagers, and it was described on Polygon as, quote, basically a cozy take on Hazelight's It Takes Two and Split Fiction. Like, take my money. I'm going to need it right now. And on that note of anticipation, that's all for me this month. You'll find a link to the newsletter below, where you will find links to many of the things I discussed today. And while you're there, be sure to add yourself to the mailing list so my newsletter can come straight into your inbox. Not until, into, straight into your inbox. Until next time, be excellent to each other and always cite your sources. This podcast was produced by Zeitgeist, a multimedia content production studio that focuses on the intersection of games, science, and pop culture, created by Rachel Coert.